So now it's time to discuss case queues configuration. And so I'm in Setup in Lightning Experience and I search for the word queue, and we come to our queues homepage, and it says here that queues allow groups of users to manage a shared workload more effectively. And so the main things to bear in mind as you create queues is that in this example, we're going to be creating a few work queues for cases and case records for our service agents. And the main thing to keep in mind is that once you create a queue, a corresponding list view for that queue will automatically be created as well. And so I'm going to click New in order to create our first queue. And the idea behind this is I'm going to create queues to correspond with our different interaction channels. And let's say that we have agents that specialize in handling social cases, for example. And so later we will be getting into omni-channel routing configurations, and so we don't have any created right now. But in a few lectures, we'll get into routing configurations. And so we're going to leave that blank. We're also going to leave queue email blank as well. And for supported objects, these are the different objects that you can assign to the queue. And the main thing we want to assign is cases. And so we're going to select cases as the primary object that this queue will be working. You could add other objects as well, such as leads. And then you can also add custom objects as well to the list. But we're just going to leave this with cases. And then for our queue membership, you can add people either as individual users or public groups, roles, or roles and subordinates. And so, for example, we've got a couple of public groups available that we could select, but I'm going to just use individual users and make myself a user in this particular queue. And let's add John Doe as well and click Save. Then another thing to bear in mind as we go through the process of creating a few more queues is that cases can be owned by individuals or by queues as well. And so one other thing to note as well is that the email address, and that would be this queue email, can be used for an individual or a distribution list. And so the idea behind that is, for example, if you had a distribution list, you could enter it here and then you could send an email to the members. So for example, if a new case were to hit the queue, you could send out an email to all the members in the distribution list that there's a new case. And then someone could come in and take ownership of that case and start working it. But we're not going to set a queue email, but I want to at least explain what that was as well. And then once again, we're going to add the case object as the selected object in this queue. I'm going to make myself a member of this queue, but not John Doe, and click Save. And then in other examples, other than just interaction channels for queues, I've worked in situations where we needed Spanish-speaking agents to handle cases. So we created a Spanish-speaking queue. And so, for example, in that scenario, you could just label the queue Spanish-speaking. And if there's cases that require a Spanish-speaking agent, you could have like a checkbox, for instance, on the case object called Spanish. And then those could be automatically routed to this queue. You could do that through assignment rules. And so we're going to cover assignment rules in the next lecture. And so then as well, we're going to add case here. And so we've just gone through, and I'm going to add myself and John Doe to this one. But we've just gone through and we've created 3 different case queues here. And one thing that you can see then, like if we were to go to the service application and click the cases tab, I want to bring up a list view here. And we've got these different list views available. And if you remember, I mentioned previously in this lecture that when you create a new queue, that a corresponding list view is created as well with the name of that queue. And I'm a member of each of these 3 queues that we just created, such as social and Spanish speaking and email. And so you can click on any of these list views to see which of these cases belong to those queues, meaning which of these cases are owned by these queues. And so, for example, if I were to go to the all open cases list view and select case 1032, this is just a recent case that I worked for Mr. Andy Young, and the case owner is set to me. I could click this pencil icon here and change this, and the usability of this is not great because I've got this case details side is really squeezed here. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this layout so I can get to this better here. I'm going to click the gear icon and edit page, and I'm going to select leave page because I'm making a change to this record, but I've not completed the change. So I'm going to go ahead and leave page and go to the app builder here. And I'm going to widen this particular component. I'm going to select it. I'm actually going to move the case details up here in this wider section. This will give me greater real estate to work with. I'm going to move knowledge down and move the contact details up, for example. And so once you've made your adjustments, the main thing I'm after is just changing this case details though. I'm going to click save. So once you've saved, I'm going to go back and then I'm going to refresh the screen if this doesn't show up. The changes did show up automatically. Sometimes you got to refresh in Lightning Experience in order for the details to show up. So now I can finally see the case owner. And so I'm going to click the pencil icon, click X to close that out, and then I'm going to search for my queue. So let's say that this is a Spanish-speaking contact that we're working on this case. And so I don't want to search in users though, I want to search in queues. And so the person icon designates searching for user. I want to change this to a queue, which is the stack of papers here icon, and assign this to the Spanish speaking queue. So now the case owner will be changed from myself to a queue and that of Spanish speaking. And so now if I go back to the cases tab to hit that list view, I can change the list view here by clicking the down arrow and looking at the Spanish speaking one, and we now see the one case that I just changed the ownership to. So now, for example, let's imagine we worked in a Salesforce environment where there were hundreds of service agents, and let's say dozens of those agents could speak Spanish. They would be working in this Spanish speaking queue looking for cases to work, and there could be hundreds or dozens of cases, and they could go and select one of these in order to work it. And so picking a case off of the queue, how that works then is, let's say I'm looking for my next case to work, I could select change owner from the drop down here, and I could assign this to myself by selecting from the drop down and clicking submit. And now I've just taken that case off of the queue. You notice that it's disappeared from the Spanish speaking queue. And I could select my cases to see just the ones that I own. And you can sort these columns as well by clicking the header. So here's the 1032, and that's the Spanish speaking case that I was discussing previously. So now other things that we can do and to bear in mind is that you can set up a case assignment rule to automatically reassign ownership of cases to the queue, and we're going to cover that in the next lecture.